Good to see you all in God. First reading this morning is Okay. First reading this morning is Isaiah 6, verses 1 through 3. In the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord sitting on a high and exalted throne, the edge of his robe filling the temple. Winged creatures were stationed around him. Each had 6 wings. With 2 they veiled their faces, with 2 their feet, and with 2 they flew about. They shouted to each other, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of heavenly forces. All the earth is filled with God's glory." The second reading is Psalm 97. The Lord rules. Let the earth rejoice. Let all the islands celebrate. Clouds and thick darkness surround God. Righteousness and justice are the foundation of God's throne. Fire proceeds before God, burning up God's enemies on every side. God's lightning lights up the world. The earth sees it and trembles. The mountains melt like wax before the Lord of the whole world. Heaven has proclaimed God's righteousness, and all nations have seen the glory of the Lord. All those who worship images, those who are proud of idols, are put to shame. All gods bow down to the Lord. Zion has heard and celebrates. The towns of Judah rejoice. Because of your acts of justice, Lord, because you, Lord, are the most high over all the earth, because you are so superior to all other gods. Those of you who love the Lord hate evil. God guards the lives of all faithful ones, delivering them from the power of the wicked. Light is planted like seed for the righteous person. Joy too for those whose heart is right. Rejoice in the Lord, righteous ones. Give thanks to God's holy name. Next reading is John 1, verses 1 through 14. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word was with God in the beginning. Everything came into being through the Word, and without the Word, nothing came into being. What came into being through the Word was life. The life was the light for all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness doesn't extinguish the light. A man named John was sent from God. He came as a witness to testify concerning the light, so that through him everyone would believe in the light. He himself wasn't the light, but his mission was to testify concerning the light. The true light that shines on all people was coming into the world. The light was in the world, and the world came into being through the light. But the world didn't recognize the light. The light came to his own people, and his own people didn't welcome him. But those who did welcome him, those who believe in his name, he authorized to become God's children, born not from blood, nor from human desire or passion, but born from God. The Word became flesh and made his home among us. We have seen his glory, glory like that of his Father's only Son, full of grace and truth.
As some of you know, I love morning. Definitely a morning person. It's the time when the world seems fresh and new and whole, and that in that moment, all things are possible. I've woken from my rest and I am ready. Perhaps morning is beautiful because I often take a little while to put my glasses on. The sharp edges are softened, the harshnesses are smoothed out and imbued with the light of hope. I love mourning for the quiet and for the time to remember my connection to earth, creation, and to God. It's in the morning hours that I'm able to connect and be more in communion with earth and hear it as a full partner in my life. The scriptures this morning tell us that the earth is not a backdrop for the stories of our life. It is a character, an entity with which we interact. Scriptures remind us that the earth is full of God's glory. It is full of God's glory. It is, as Mary Oliver would say, dazzling. It rejoices. It says the islands, Zach, you have the right shoes on today. The islands celebrate. The island, you have to check out Zach's shoes. Sharon, just so you know, he has palm trees on his shoes today. Brand new. And you're like, oh, please, Pastor, be quiet, right? But they're wonderful. They make me think of the scripture. The islands rejoice. It says they celebrate. And it's that kind of animation of creation that the scriptures bring to us. And they tell us of how all of creation and the world that we live in is full of glorious, riotous, creative diversity. All of it celebrates. From the loamy forest paths and the desert sands, from the outcrops of rock and the majestic mountains that are framed by forests and lakes, it all rejoices. The tropical rainforest, the vast tundra, and the land frozen under glaciers, it all rejoices and celebrates and is full of God's glory. It's not the background, but rather a full partner in our human faith-filled story. Now, over the last week, I had the joyous privilege of experiencing some terrain different than my normal days. I was able to see the Great Smoky Mountains. We went to see Tammy as she celebrated her wedding, and her house is not on GPS, just so you know. But it is beautiful, and we were able to see the rivers that cut through the land and to see a gorge that is so deep that it reveals the power of tectonic plates. And you can see the earth, the stone that has been completely folded. Not only that, geological eras, when you think of the land, you know, we think of the oldest and then the newer to the newest, right? Like a layer cake. Well, this one was so upside down and topsy-turvy from the power that some of the oldest rocks had been forced up by the power of earth above the new rocks, folded between. You could see geological creation and sort of geological havoc laid bare on the deepest gorge on the eastern seaboard. I saw beautiful forests. We saw an elk, and we even saw a brown bear or black bear run across the road. I have a picture to prove it. So much of what I saw looked and seemed as if there had been no human interaction ever. And yet I knew, by looking at the size of the trees and by the fact that we were on either a gravel or paved road, that human people had been there and taken action that allowed my access. So I tried to tread lightly, to remember the partnership with earth. Now, on the way home to Wisconsin, we traveled the whole length of Illinois. It's a long state. And if you've who's never been to Southern Illinois? It is flat. And I remember driving the very first time when I drove with Larry from the University of Missouri to his family in the Chicago area, marveling at how flat it was. I grew up amongst the hills and the valleys and the mountains of New York, and so it was flat. And I decided that I would name part of the terrain. And when you're driving up whatever I-65, what were we driving on? 57. The only thing that breaks the terrain are the overpasses. The Illini Range, as I call it, created by human hands. At one stop, we were pulling off and I could see over on the eastern side of the highway a hill or hillock. It wasn't a mountain, it wasn't too big. And I wondered about it and I realized what I was looking at was a garbage dump. I couldn't see it clearly and I certainly couldn't smell it, but having been by a few dumps in my life, the memory was very vivid of the debris and the decay and the smell. And I thought for a long time about this transformation of landscape so far from any town, how easy it was to make sure that every time we stopped, we took out the trash. We emptied it into those receptacles by the gas pump. And our space was clean, and I honestly didn't give too much thought as long as we gave Maggie the tops of the water bottles. That was important. It'll come up later. But our space was clean, and I didn't really think too much about where the trash was going to go. For me, in that moment, the car was tidy, it was comfortable, and it was done and dusted. But you and I know that it wasn't really done and dusted. Someplace else, generally out of my sight, right? To that moment, I could see it, but generally out of my sight, the earth will be ripped open and piles would begin. Bags and bags and bags of trash, efficiently removed from the ends of our driveway or from bins along the journey, would be dumped into the sacredness of earth. And some of it was going to stay there for a really long time in stretchy, spill-proof, odor-resistant bags. But what we know for sure is that the garbage dump is not in our neighborhood. It's in somebody else's neighborhood. Yet the toxins that will eventually leach from the refuse will get into the water and the earth, rendering her unable to rejoice, unable to celebrate. The way we dispose of our garbage is only one way we forget our relationship to earth. There are so many other ways. Pollutions of all sorts seem to be acceptable up until a point, especially if they're not in my backyard. That idea that NIB and NIMBY, some people call it, right? Not in my backyard, is not ever an appropriate Christian response. If human actions adversely affect the earth, it is unacceptable, completely and totally unacceptable for us to say and do nothing. If we say we're people of faith, that we believe in Jesus Christ, who came to be with us as Emmanuel, Mike Reddy, he came and dwelt among us, then we can simply not ensure that we have a good life. We're commanded by the living presence of God to love God and our neighbor. We're commanded to realize that our good life and the detritus that flow from it impact our neighbors and all of creation. You've heard this sermon before, maybe more than once in your life. So what do we do? How do we move from feeling guilty, which is what I generally feel, to taking action? In a recent email from Cameron Timbrell, she's the CEO of a project called the Convergence Project from the Center for Progressive Renewal, I learned about active hope. This is a concept that she had been reading about and developed by a woman named Joanna Macy, who Cameron describes as an eco-philosopher, scholar of Buddhism, general systems theory, and deep ecology. She lives at the edge of despair and hope as she helps the rest of us awaken to our impact on the planet and our potential to create a better world. Active hope, Joanna Macy says, is a practice. It's like Tai Chi or gardening. It is something we do rather than something we have. I would say that active hope is like love. It's something we do rather than something we have. It's a process that we can apply to any situation. And Joanna Macy has sifted it and sorted it and congealed it down to 3 easy points. 3 easy steps that you and I can take every day. First, she says, we take a clear view of reality. Yes, my friends, we have to put our glasses on in the morning and see it all. Second, we have to identify what we hope for. What would be our longing in terms of the direction we'd like to see things go or the values we want to see expressed? What are our hopes in terms of direction and values? And third, we have to take steps to move ourselves or our situation in that direction. I think I've told you about riding a horse, right? You got to look where you want to go. Well, this is the same idea. We have to have an idea of where we want to go. And I think we sometimes miss that step. At least I know I do. For Macy, active hope isn't about wishful thinking or denying the real pain of life. Active hope is about staring directly into the heartbreak, looking at the garbage dump, looking at the pollution, and seeing the change that needs to be made and getting to work to make it so. Active hope is fierce. Active hope is brave. Active hope is honest. Active hope, says Joanna Macy, is the readiness to discover the strengths in ourselves and in others. I love the idea that it's a process of discovery. It's not that we already know everything that we're strong enough to do, but that we'll work on figuring that out, that we'll work on finding our strengths, and that it's a readiness to discover the reasons for hope and the occasions for love. It's a readiness to discover the size and the strength of our own heart. If you make a fist, that's the size of your heart. That's the size of your heart, approximately. But if you open your hand, that's the size of your love. There's a difference between the size of your heart and the size of your love. The size of your love is amazing and extensive, right? Active hope is finding and discovering the quickness of mind and our steadiness in purpose. It's the liveliness of our curiosity. Is a keen sense, a keen awareness of our senses and the capacity to lead. Cameron continues to say that so much of our world is hard to look at. So much of it breaks our hearts. But that's where we begin, rooting our hope in trusting that God is with us every step of the way. We hold to a fierce knowing that together we will create a more just and generous world in the end. This morning, when the whole world seems fresh and all things are possible, can we accept the challenge to be active in our hope? Cameron's words and Joanna Macy's idea inspire me. They help me see beyond the environmental and ecological struggles to a place and space and time and the possibility and maybe the probability that we will again be in full, respectful, life-giving relationships with Earth, not only because we have to. If we want to survive as a human species, we have to, but also because of the deep and abiding faith that in all creation, you and me, in the bread, in the wine, in the earth, in the dirt, in the bugs and the bees, all of it, quasars and quarks are filled with the glory of God. So how might that look for us here at St. John's? Could we recycle plastic into benches and building material? Now, Maggie has been collecting, I've been saving at my home, little bottle tops. And I looked this morning, there's a program in Evansville, Indiana, and I'm sure there's one nearby, where these get recycled into park benches. And I know congregations in our association actually that have collected plastic, and I'm not sure what kinds, and they've had them, gathered them all in, I mean, hundreds of pounds of them, and had a bench made. And then they did it again and had another bench made. And then they were ready to do it a third time, and they were told by whatever organization it was, like, two's the limit. There's more plastic in the world. But could we do that? I don't know. Is somebody willing to look up an organization that says, what do we do? Maggie, who's your friend? Ask her what organization it is. You're going to see her this evening. You're going to ask her. She's doing it for her organization, so you can give her a deposit. But what organization is it? And can we do that? Can we partner with people here in the village to do that and maybe put a bench at a park instead of on our property? That's a possibility, something we could do. So Maggie, I'm charging you with finding out an organization, at least a starting spot, where we might collect things. And when the one I looked at in Evansville, Illinois, or Evansville, Indiana, I guess was, lots of different tops. Maggie, I've just been saving for you these milk tops and things like that. But there was like all kinds. At least there was certain recyclable things, okay? So that's possible. Can we add trees to our property? We have, how many acres do we have, Mike? Here? Two-ish acres. We have probably 10 trees, maybe. Could we add more trees? What would it take for families to add a tree, to buy a tree to place on our property? What difference would that make? That cleans the air. That could be in honor of, in memory of, in love of, in hope of. Plant one for each 3 boys and picture by it, and then year by year by year by year. By 2 boys, year by year by year. By daughter, year by year by year. Crazy making when we think of the ways we could change the shape of this space with trees. I think we have a connection to somebody with trees, don't we? Yeah, I think we might. What about the fact that our building faces south and north? This whole south side of the building is a potential for solar. What does it look like if we add some solar to maybe reduce our dependency on fossil fuels to heat, maybe even just the water, or to take care of some of the lighting? We've changed to LED lights. What if we added solar, just a panel or 2, and shifted the LED lights to the solar panels, and that's like 0? You, my friend, Zach, I'm charging you and your brother, Ethan, and Andrew, if he wants to help. I'm charging the 3 of you guys to find me some solar power energy option that we can explore, okay? You're in confirmation, you just became a new member, you're in confirmation, this is your charge, okay? There are congregations in Wisconsin that have done it. I can connect you with those folks because our whole conference office in DeForest, it is completely solar. All the space that they can use is solar. I don't think the building is completely solar yet, but does anybody know how to write a letter? Andrew, you know how to write a letter? Awesome. Because we can look at structures and systems, both in the government and in corporations, to demand that large-scale polluters do their job. My nephew posted something in New York the other day about air conditioning. It's hot in New York. It's hot in Seattle. It's hot in a lot of places, right? And the city was saying to folks, please put the temperature up a little bit on your air conditioning. Use a little bit less. Meanwhile, we will have Times Square fully illuminated. What that tried to do was shift the responsibility to the individual with an air conditioner and remove it from the city. But the city was not being ecologically sound. They were still consuming the same amount of electricity. So it's that kind of conversation. When that happens, when we see that happen, could we write a letter? Could we send an email? Could we make a call? We probably could. All the things we can do, we must do some. Personally, individually, and as a corporation, as a corporate group. So we're going to look at here, We're going to look at solar. We're going to look at trees. We're going to think about trees. So if you're interested in a tree, talk to Mike because Mike knows somebody with trees. Okay. Not so much anymore, but they might know where we could get trees. They might know, they may not have the trees, but they might know where we could get the trees. And if they don't, we'll find another source. That's not a problem. And then anybody else, when you see or hear that sort of shift, up your air conditioning, but I'm not going to reduce the city lighting, let's write a letter. Let's make a phone call. Let's look at what we can do. How many of you own a stock in anything? Some of you have stocks and annuities and this and that. Well, look at those companies. You're a stock holding member, write them and say, I want to make sure you're doing things ecologically and environmentally sound. Those are things we can do. That's active hope. Active hope, so that every morning in the future, our children and our grandchildren and our great-great-grandchildren can wake up, they can put their glasses on, and they can see a world that is truly the way God wanted it to be, in full, healthy, whole relationship with humanity and the rest of creation. We got our work cut out for us, but we can do it. I know we can. I think I have on the slide for the beauty of the earth. I might not even have, I don't know if I even put the slides together.